Fame. What is it? Why do so many people crave it? Over the last few decades, there are those who have achieved first-name status with the world. Elvis, Bruce, Prince, Cher, Elton, Arnold, Mick, Ringo, just to mention a few. They are the rock stars of our time. But there are many others who've paved the way for them. Here are some celebrities that were the big thing of their time. They were the rock stars of the past, and some of them may surprise you. Friedrich Wilhelm Müller, who took the stage name of Eugene Sandow, was a German pioneering bodybuilder known as the father of modern bodybuilding. In the 1890s to 1900s, he amazed audiences with posing and incredible feats of strength. Sandow was promoter Florence Ziegfeld's first big star. Sandow traveled all around the world making personal appearances. He molded his physique to resemble classic Greek and Roman sculpture. Sandow was befriended by people like King George V, Thomas Edison, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes. Women paid Sandow money just to feel his flexed muscles. Eugene Sandow was a star and sex symbol of his era. Alfredo Codona was a member of the world-famous Flying Codona's circus troupe and was the first aerialist to continually perform the triple somersault. He came from a renowned circus family and began appearing in the circus at 7.5 months with his father, brother, and sister. He perfected the triple somersault in the 1920s. During that era, radio was barely in its infancy. Until 1927, only silent movies were being shown. There was no television or the internet, so circus performers brought live entertainment to a multitude of people and were greatly admired. In 1928, Codona married famed aerialist Lillian Lietzel, who died in 1931 in Copenhagen, Denmark, when one of her hand rings snapped and she fell to a concrete floor. Codona was acknowledged for many years to be one of the best trapeze flyers who ever lived. He was famous throughout the world as a performer and personality and appeared in several movies. He was considered by many as a living legend. George Herman Babe Ruth played Major League Baseball from 1914 until 1935. He achieved his greatest fame as a left-handed slugging outfielder for the New York Yankees. His batting record includes 714 career home runs. He became a larger-than-life figure all over the world in the Roaring '20s. Babe Ruth always found time to visit children in hospitals and orphanages. The Babe was a true sports hero and one of the greatest baseball players of all time.
You're the biggest thing that's been in this stadium since Babe Dickerson.
Will Rogers had rock star status in the 1920s and 30s. He was a cowboy, vaudeville trick rope performer, humorist, newspaper columnist, social commentator, and stage and movie actor. Rogers traveled the world performing, made 71 films, and wrote more than 4,000 nationally syndicated newspaper columns.
We'll hold the distinction of being the only nation in the history of the world that ever went to the poorhouse in an automobile.
He was the leading political wit of his time and was the highest paid Hollywood movie star. Will Rogers symbolized the common man. People believed he lived the American dream of upward mobility.
While I planned my acres with golden grass.
Rudy Vallee was a singer, band leader, film and stage actor, and radio star. After graduating from Yale and forming his own band, his singing caught on, especially with young women. He soon got a recording contract and appeared on radio shows of the day. He was radio's first crooner. Sinatra, Crosby, Dean Martin, Perry Como, and others followed his singing style. Screaming women mobbed him wherever he went. His live appearances were always sold out. He once drew over 65,000 people at an appearance on Manhattan Beach. Rudy Vallee's radio show in the 1930s redefined the course of radio broadcasting. He soon turned his radio program into the first radio variety show featuring musicians, actors, comedians, singers, and politicians. Rudy Vallee changed the course of American media entertainment. Al Jolson was a singer, film actor, radio star, and comedian. At the peak of his career in the 1930s, he was called the world's greatest entertainer. Many singers were influenced by his music and singing style, including Tony Bennett, David Bowie, Bob Dylan, and Rod Stewart. In the 1930s, Jolson was America's most famous and highly paid entertainer.
Warner Brothers' mightiest musical attraction with that greatest of entertainers, Al Jolson.
At one time, he had 80 hit records. In 1927, he was the star of the first talking picture entitled The Jazz Singer. After Pearl Harbor was attacked, Jolson was the first star to entertain troops overseas during World War II. Jolson was truly a rock star of his day. Josephine Baker was a dancer, singer, and actress. She's acknowledged to be the first black superstar. Born Frida Josephine McDonald in St. Louis, Missouri in 1906, she rose from poverty to become a world-famous icon. Her mother and father were entertainers. At a very young age, Baker started street corner dancing to make extra money for the family. In her teens, she had a short-lived marriage to William Baker. She was soon dancing in Broadway revues like Shuffle Along and performing at the famous Cotton Club. Josephine Baker refused to perform for segregated audiences in the United States and was considered an early proponent of the civil rights movement. In protest of segregation, she gave up her U.S. citizenship in 1937 and became a citizen of France. Because of her worldwide fame, the Nazis didn't bother her, and so she was able to assist the French resistance by gathering information about German, Italian, and Japanese troop movements as she was attending their dinner parties. Ernest Hemingway called her the most sensational woman anyone ever saw. Josephine Baker's life and talent influenced stars like Shirley Bassey, Grace Kelly, Angelina Jolie, and Beyoncé.
You'll be marching there beside me. Even
Betty Grable was an actress, model, dancer, singer, and comedian. During the 1940s, Grable was 20th Century Fox's biggest film star. In 1943, Betty Grable was the #1 box office draw in the world. In 1947, she was the highest-paid entertainer in the United States. In 1943, Grable collaborated with a photographer for a studio publicity shoot. In one of the photos, she wore a one-piece bathing suit, and that picture became the most requested photo for GIs during World War II. That photo was included in Life magazine's 100 Photographs That Changed the World. Betty Grable had true legend status. Since the 1950s, every rock band, every outrageous musician, singer, and personality, every colorful professional sports team and athlete, every over-the-top radio and television host all owe a debt of gratitude to George Raymond Wagner. George Wagner was also known as professional wrestler Gorgeous George. During the late 1940s and early 1950s, he was one of the biggest stars of that period. He realized the entertainment value of being flamboyant and charismatic. He wore outlandish capes to the wrestling ring, accompanied by a valet. He dyed his hair blonde, gave outlandish interviews, and was the first entertainer to enter the arena with a musical introduction and a purple spotlight. He became a huge television star and international celebrity. He created a new sense of theatrics. George Wagner died in 1963, but is still remembered by many as a true pop culture icon. These famous people from the past are only a few of the celebrities who've attained rock star status. There are so many others like Louis Armstrong, Joe Louis, George Washington Carver, Audie Murphy, Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant, Walt Disney, in addition to Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, the creatives of Superman. But what about the famous of the future? Who are they? Perhaps one of them is you.